The research and national defense facilities of the Oak Ridge Reservation are vital parts of our nation's scientific community. To continue to meet these needs, parts of the reservation require cleanup from the impacts of years of energy research. The Oak Ridge Site-Specific Advisory Board is the voice of the community, providing input to the U.S. Department of Energy on its environmental cleanup of the reservation. To learn more about this important work, you're invited to attend meetings of the Oak Ridge Site-Specific Advisory Board.
Okay, I think we'll go ahead and start our first meeting of the new year, calendar year. I'd like to welcome you all and the public here tonight. I want to remind everybody to try to use the microphone and remind me, because sometimes I drift away from it too. And also use your name tags when you need to be recognized. During the question and answer sessions, the board members come first, and then we'll have the public come to the microphone and ask the questions they have. Our next meeting will be on the 13th of February, and it looks like we'll be talking about the 2015 EM budget for Oak Ridge. At this time, we'd like to have the comments from DOE.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mark Whitney. I'm the manager of the DOE Oak Ridge Office of Environmental Management, and this is my first SSAB meeting since I've been here. I did come by before I officially moved down. I believe that was in July, and so now I've had a little bit of time to get settled in, and so it's a pleasure for me to be here tonight. It's been suggested to me, and I don't want to bore anybody. I don't know why actually anybody will want to know this, but it's been suggested to me that I should say a little bit about myself and just talk for a couple minutes about the program going forward. But I won't take a whole lot of time, but obviously open to questions. First of all, I want to thank you all for your service to the board, and truly appreciate it as leaders to the providing outreach to the community and providing advice and recommendations to DOE Environmental Management Program here in Oak Ridge. Very important to us, critical in helping us do what we do, so we do appreciate that. So I did come from headquarters before I arrived here. I arrived here on July 28th, actually, and started in early August in the office. And at headquarters, I was working for the National Nuclear Security Administration. I was the Principal Assistant Deputy Administrator for Defense Nuclear Nonproliferation. And it's much easier now to say my title. And in that capacity, most of our work was international nuclear security, international nuclear nonproliferation work. And so I spent the last 4 years at headquarters prior to arriving here. Before that, I was in Moscow, Russia, and I was the director of the Department of Energy's office in Moscow, or in Russia, and a lot of people don't actually know that we have an office in Russia, but we do. We have a lot of work there, mainly in the nuclear security and nonproliferation arena. Before that, I was in the private sector. I worked for SAIC, supporting headquarter programs, environmental management, NNSA, and specifically in the 90s, I worked in the EM program at headquarters, the Office of Science and Technology. It was a technology development program, and worked directly for the Deputy Assistant Secretary at that time was Gerald Boyd, and so maintained a close professional and personal relationship with Gerald, and so he always told me how good things were here in Oak Ridge and the benefits. So it's a pleasure for me to be here. I actually really feel very fortunate for my family and myself to be here. I grew up in Middle Tennessee, in Clarksville, and so it's like coming home to me. And I love the East Tennessee area, and on a personal level, very happy to be here. I am getting adjusted. It's been a lot to learn, for sure. One thing I've found is that we have a very professional and dedicated staff, federal staff here in Oak Ridge. Very impressed by that. Very competent, strong contractor teams and strong partnerships with those teams. Very active community and involved and supportive community. And and I won't say necessarily I was surprised by all those things, but I'm definitely encouraged. And I think that, one thing that we definitely want to do as we go forward with our program is to continue to keep the lines of communication open on what we're doing. And so this is one of those forum for doing that. Let's see, maybe a couple minutes about FY13 and some. Okay, so I got to be careful what I say because Dave will, if he basically feel free to step in and correct me when I'm wrong. I said I'm still learning, but the last few months have been a very interesting time with the budgets, and I know you guys know all about the continuing resolution and where we are with the different levels of budgets and what that's meant for our programs, for programs out at ETTP, the K-25 D&D program, K-27. But there have been some impacts across the board to varying degrees. We've still completed a lot of work during the continuing resolution period, and the rest of the fiscal year 13 is going to be very exciting. We have some very important activities that are coming up. In addition to continue to work on K-25 and hopefully I don't want to steal Jim's thunder because I know he's here to speak to give a presentation on the work out there, but and he'll tell you about all the things that are going on, including I think a milestone that'll happen this month. We have a Mercury strategy that's going to be completed in March, which is going to be, I think, critical to our program going forward and help us define what the rest of our program will be in addition to the work at Mercury, the Mercury work at Y12. We are rebaselining the program just to capture all the scope of work in the Integrated Facility Disposition Program that's not currently part of our baseline. And we have a lot of work at the lab, the U-233 disposition project. As you, I'm sure, know, that has received a lot of scrutiny because it's a Cat 1 facility, and so we've had three headquarter reviews of the security of the facility over the past several months. At the same time, we're trying to execute a project there, and we are preparing for the direct disposition portion of that program to go forward, and so that's or to continue after the zipper canisters were shipped out west. Critical stage for the project, and so a lot of different things going on. Like I said, I'm still learning, but what I am learning, I'm encouraged by, and great staff, great team, and so I am open to questions. I'm not exactly sure what the protocol is, but open to any questions that you might have. But I want to thank you again for your time, and looking forward to working with you.
Okay. Any questions? How about from the public? Any questions? Thank you, Mark. David?
Good evening, everyone. Just a couple quick things. When we last met, I mentioned that we were in something called an informal dispute with EPA and TDEC. It's basically associated with the FY13 budgetary challenges that we faced and the associated impacts on some of our project schedules and the need to renegotiate a few milestones. Since we last met, that has been done. We've now agreed to reset some milestones for the ETTP site. Not major changes. The differences are measured in months, not years. But all that has been completed now, and at least that component of that dispute is resolved. Dave had asked also that we mention the status, a very, very brief status on the U-233 project. Mark discussed it briefly, so I won't add much. But as Mark was saying, we've got two basic categories of material we're getting rid of through the 3019 project. One is material that we can dispose of directly without treatment, and the other half, roughly, is material that does require treatment before it can be put on the road and disposed of. Our efforts continue to be focused on the direct disposable material, with all these things called zipper plates or zero power reactor plates having been disposed. And we're focused on disposing now about 400 canisters of something else called cusp material, which is a special material that we can direct dispose in the western deserts also. The remaining way, that activity hopefully will be budget limited or budget driven. Hopefully we will be out of the business of direct disposal over the next couple of years. The remaining material that requires treatment is currently more in a planning phase and won't be starting up for a couple of years, but that will start up when we are ready to do it safely, and that activity will continue for quite a while, into the early 2020s until the project can finally wind up and be finished. So that's the big picture on where we're at on that project. Of course, we've scheduled, I believe, to have the project director for U-233 to come in and give you a detailed presentation on the status of the project, so that'll be coming. That's it for me.
John?
Thank you, sir. I have no announcements, but would be glad to answer any questions that I may.
Question? Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Richards?
Subbing for Connie Jones, asked me to be up here for ORNL and Y12 meetings today. I don't have any comments, but here to answer any questions and observe.
Okay, thank you, everybody. At this time, we have a public comment.
So the public comment period is now open. First, we have Norman Mulvaney. So please state your name and keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Norman Mulvaney. I'm a former member of the board and also I've been active in this business since 1997. I've been coming to board meetings since 1997. I'd like to welcome everybody here, especially Mark, and everybody here too. I was reminded by Jim Chapati a little bit earlier tonight that in 1997 he was giving a presentation on surface impoundments. He didn't have a laser pointer. And I raised my hand and I said, I'll offer you mine. So he came out and he got it. And he did his presentation. So every time after that, anytime he came to a meeting, he always said, well, Norman's probably got a laser pointer, so I don't have to worry about it. We're starting on another year here under some serious budgetary constraints. But at the same time, though, I think I can see that our leadership is very good, and we're going to move forward. So thank you very much. Let's get with it.
All right. Are there any other members of the public who want to comment? All right. So as a Citizens Advisory Board to the Department of Energy on environmental cleanup, we want to encourage the community at large to attend and participate in our board and committee meetings. If you are unable to attend, please send in your questions and comments to the addresses shown. Appropriate comments and questions will be read during the public comment period section of the SSAB meeting and will be given the same consideration by the board and DOE as those given in person. Meeting schedules and ways to communicate with the board can be obtained by calling 241-4583 or by visiting our website.
Thank you. Our presentation tonight is on the East Tennessee Technology Park cleanup status. David, would you please introduce our speaker?
With pleasure, Mr. Chairman. Presenter this evening is Jim Kopatic. Jim began his career with DOE in the early 90s as a site manager with the formerly utilized Sites Remedial Action Program, where he managed the cleanup of numerous sites in the Northeast. In 1997, he was project manager for ORNL surface impoundments, gunite tanks, and the Phase 1 Tank W1A soil removal action. Since 2000, Jim has worked at ETTP and is currently the DOE Portfolio Federal Projects Director for that site. Jim has a degree in environmental science from University of Georgia, and he presently resides in Knoxville, Tennessee. So Jim, if you would entertain us, please, with your wisdom, we would greatly appreciate it.
Norman, thanks for bringing that up. It's amazing to think that 15 years have passed since I gave my first presentation, and I haven't improved any since then either. All right, now which one's which? Okay, before I get started, I'd like to thank David for parking the model excavator out there. It makes me and my guys over here feel at home. I'd like to introduce Steve Dahlgren. Steve is a key manager within the UCOR organization. He's also the project manager for K-27. Many of you have met Mark Ferry when we were here before. Mark couldn't be with us tonight, so in his place he sent Kurt Walker. Kurt is, come on up, Kurt. Kurt Walker is over all the pre-demo activities and characterization for both 25 and 27. You'll see a lot of the guys, and I'll try to get into it today a little bit, or this evening a little bit. We've accelerated 27, got headquarters to agree that we could accelerate that work so that we could utilize a lot of the workers from 25 on 27, maintain the experience and the knowledge, save money, and also to try and accelerate K-27 to reduce the risks. I don't know if it's easier for me to stand back here or, okay. All right, this generally just shows you where ETTP is located, northwest corner of the reservation. Just a brief history. ETTP, K-25, formerly K-25 site, construction was started in the early 40s, 1943 on K-25. At the same time, you had work going on at Y-12 to produce, construct the Catron. You also had at ORSSAB the graphite reactor. All this was in a race to try and produce the atomic bomb. Permanently shut down in 87. The actual facility, K-25, stopped enriching uranium in 67, and it was used as a purge cascade for reactor returns, and I'll get into that. All right. In around 1998, the SSAB developed the end-use, set up a team, the end-use working group, and they came up with recommendations for DOE as to what various sites on the Oak Ridge Reservation would be used for. ETTP, it was decided that it would be a commercial industrial park to support private industry. And in 2000, DOE sat down with EPA and the state of Tennessee, and we agreed on that in-state use, that it would be a commercial industrial park. With that, we defined two areas, Zone 1 and Zone 2. Zone 1 is 1,400 acres, and it's outside the former production area. Light industrial, open area. There were a few disposal areas, burial grounds, etc. And then Zone 2 was the production area inside, behind the fence, where all the process buildings were located. So our approach was, let's go out into Zone 1, start cleaning it up while we were inside Zone 2, demolishing buildings so that we could have access to contaminated soil and groundwater. These are just a couple of photographs of early cleanup actions. 1078 Burial Ground is located in the northwest corner of Zone 1. It's approximately 1 acre, and we had to dig down 15 to 18 feet to remove buried materials in that area. Top right photograph was an early action. We referred to it as the G-pit excavation. If Connie was here, John would know. And of course, let's see, Robert Jolly, Angel, Tom Gephardt. This was an early action to exhume materials, mainly solvent, drums of spent solvents and degreasers that were buried. This area of the site is located on the eastern edge of the Zone 2 area, inside Zone 2, near the 1070 CD burial ground. I don't know if I'll point that out. And then in the lower right-hand corner, John knows about this one, we put in a slurry wall and a series of extraction wells to, the intent was to prevent contamination from the site from flowing into Mitchell Branch. If nothing else, slow it down. And the Mitchell Branch, of course, flows off-site. In addition, we removed over 48,000 tons of scrap metal from down in the powerhouse area. And that area is now clear, and there's one small area that we still need to touch on, and I'll show a picture of that. Many of you who have been around, like Norman Mulvaney and Susan Garawecki, you remember all the cylinder yards. We had 6 cylinder yards, over 7,000 cylinders, just like you see in the pictures of Portsmouth and Paducah. All 7,000 cylinders were safely shipped off-site. 1,000 were direct disposed. 6,000 were shipped up to Portsmouth in support of the depleted uranium project up there. Most recently, we completed excavation and remediation of our last burial ground on site that needed to be cleaned up, the 1070B burial ground, which is located adjacent to and east of K25 on the northern edge of the site. Okay, as far as the Zone 1 and Zone 2 remedial cleanups go, green is a good thing, right? Hatch green is even better. And the hatched green is all this stuff in here, which means that EPA and the state of Tennessee, we've submitted our reports and all the data, and they've agreed that no further actions are warranted in these areas. The small area down here, there's 7-acre area down in this area of the powerhouse area, where back in the early 40s, when the original power plant was located down there, they had about 6 to 8 diesel fuel, bunker C fuel storage tanks that had asbestos blankets. Those were stripped and just disposed of, excavated and buried on site down there. So we've got an area down there that we've got to work with EPA and the state on the final remediation for that area. DOE's probably going to propose that we just cap it, but that will be another proposed plan feasibility study, and the public and everybody will weigh in on that decision. So as far as the acreage goes, we started out with 2,200 acres in total. 1,500 acres have been cleaned up. The vast majority remaining is in around the remaining buildings that exist on site. Okay, here's the site, an aerial photograph of the site in the late 90s before any demolition began. There's K25. It's 44 acres under roof. There's 33, 31, 27, 29, and I don't know if Spencer, it'd probably been easier to, I assume they know these buildings or we have a schematic, but this kind of shows just what the site looked like before anything started. Okay, I mentioned that construction started in the early 40s. Building was shut down in 64. And everybody knows, if you've ever looked at houses, if you shut a house down, you shut down the heating and air conditioning system, and you go away on vacation for 2 or 3 weeks, when you come back, it just smells musty. It's not the same. Well, this building wasn't heated, and it wasn't air conditioned, and it sat there, and you're looking at a 44-acre roof. We didn't demolish it, or we didn't move out on demolishing it, because at the time there was, well, it may be needed. Nuclear engineering was saying, well, it may be needed. So we just sort of let it sit in a kind of a status condition with little to no maintenance. The last time the roof was replaced was in '79. And so as a result of that, infiltration of water, et cetera, the building really got into a very bad condition. Many may remember in 2006 we had a worker that was on the ops floor, and I'll point that out, fell through the floor, fell 29 feet. Was severely injured, but survived. So as a result of that, we had to change our demo approach. This shows the building. With the light there, you can't really see. In July of 2011, we started to segment. You'll hear the term tech area from the east non-tech. The tech area is the southern end of the east leg of K25. It's 5 units. So what we did, we created a buffer zone. So what you're looking at right there are 6 building units. Each building unit is approximately 400 feet in width, 65 feet high, and about 100 feet in depth. So that shows where we were. UCOR came on site in August 1st, and they really came in with a vengeance. As far as the demo's going, we are ahead of schedule. You can see in this photograph here, this is in September this past year. This is all that remained. Of course, the west wing was demolished by Bechtel Jacobs, the prior contractor, but at this point right now, this has been demolished. This unit, there are 3 units there, and you can tell this is the center of the unit, 1, 2, and 3. At this point, everything on the north end has been demolished except for this one little corner area, which will be completed this month. This kind of shows you when we started and October 24th with the demo. One of the highest risks that we had was identified were the sodium fluoride traps. We refer to them as NAV traps that were located in the tech area. Those 5 NAV traps have been purged. The concern was that they may contain hydrogen fluoride. They've been purged, removed from the building, and they're in safe storage. We're developing a plan to go in, characterize the NAV traps, so we'll know what to do with them. And another accomplishment, significant accomplishment, if we hadn't have achieved agreement on the memorandum of agreement with the signatory parties, consulting parties here in August of 2012, we wouldn't have been able to initiate demolition of the north end. That was done, and what we'll have is the slab will be maintained as a historic site. We'll have a similar, construct a facility that looks kind of like the floor, the inside of view of the K-25 building with the ops floor, if I get this right, the ops floor where the operators were located. This is the pipe gallery, and then where all the equipment's located. And then there'll be a viewing tower, and I know Sue Cange was instrumental along with Dave Adler in achieving this. Okay, K-27 building, it's a good thing now, 27 building is 9 units. What remains on 25 is only 6 units. So now K-25 is actually smaller than K-27. It's 9 acres in size, and there are 9 building units. K-25, when they started construction in 43, we're in the middle of the war. So not to say that they cut corners, but they cut corners. A lot of the rebar was smooth. It didn't have the gnarls on it. When they ran out of aggregate, they used river rock because we were in a race to get the building up and constructed and operational. 27, they improved the construction technique. In 25, we had precast panels on the ops floor, kind of a spun concrete mixture with wire mesh inside of it. That contributed to once we start, and it had kind of a rubbery tar mat over the top of it. As soon as that tar mat got perforations, you had in leakage of water. The water then soaked in the concrete. The wire mesh started to deteriorate, and that's what contributed to the guy falling. In K-27, we're still walking around in K-27. Steve Dahlgren and I toured K-27 several months ago, and it's a solid poured concrete floor versus a concrete panel. In addition, when they went to 29, 31, 33, they reversed the flooring. In 25 and 27, the operators were on the top floor, and all this equipment produced a tremendous amount of heat. It was difficult to keep the workers comfortable, so in the latter buildings, the post-war buildings, they flipped it around. All the equipment's up on the top floor, and the operators were on the first floor, so that you get a lot of cooling coming in from outside. Anyway, we've accelerated, got headquarters to agree to it. We've accelerated 27 building. A lot of the same folks are being utilized. The approach is pretty much the same. In pre-demo, Steve's got the pre-demo activities well underway, and I think for the most part, different conditions slightly in the presence of hydrogen fluoride. We had a lot of hydrogen fluoride in K-25 because when they pulled the plug, they just literally shut it down and pulled the plug. I don't know quite what they did. Maybe Steve had a little bit more detail and has reached it a little bit more, researched it. But in 27, about 4 or 5 of the units have been purged and no HF, right?
That's right.
So, which is a good thing. So now we're further along. In K-25 in the tech area, we had to purge that area for more than a year in order to have the conditions at a level that didn't present a risk to the workers. So a lot better conditions in 25 from a construction standpoint and from the presence of some things that have caused us problems on 25. This gives you just a view of the inside of the building, hole in the ceiling, water. The buildings right now, because the roofs haven't been replaced, whenever it rains, we joke and say when it rains outside for 1 day, it rains inside for 3 to 4 days. Because the roofs hold so much water, it's just constantly wet in the inside, which creates problems with freeze-thaw and cracking, etc. mentioned that they're following the same process. So Steve and his crew, he's got them going in there and venting and purging, draining. They're doing some NDA measurements, which we need to do. It's a system that we've set up working with the state of Tennessee and EPA and the process we go through, and they're doing intrusive sampling. We've got the 5 nav traps on K25. We've got 6 nav traps in 27, and these nav traps, K25 enrichment was greater than 20%. In 25, it's less than 20%. So these are not to be treated lightly, but they're not as high a risk as they are on 25. And Steve's already got the planning underway. The 6 nav traps, like 25, same process, will be pulled out of the building and put into safe storage. Okay, this is just a quick show and tell on all the demo activities, like the RA activities. 1401, and I'll identify it here on a sketch or a map that I've got. 1401 was over 400,000 square feet. It was demolished. 1420 building was where they did maintenance on converters, located in the northwest corner of the site, demolished. Cooling towers over by the 3133 building, demolished and disposed. Lab area located just west of the high bay area, the centrifuge facility, demolished. K29 was the first gaseous diffusion building in the DOE complex to be demolished. The steam plant used to produce steam for every building and facility out there. Now that we're converting it over to a private industrial park, we tore that down, and every leasee tenant has to provide their own steam and heat and air. We've demolished the small, or dropped the small water tower, the checkerboard water tower, which is located just southeast of 31, still exists, but we're planning that demolition. And then 1320 was just an admin building. Okay, I'm going to spend a little time on this. Yellow is a good thing. Yellow is, I'm putting myself out of a job. Because when all that map is covered in yellow, then I can go home, for the most part. And right, Mark? I mentioned a lot of buildings, and I don't know how many of you know where they're located, but this is 32 building, and it's demolished. These are all the cooling towers that were demolished. 31 building is demo ready. Many of you recall there was an effort in the 2004 timeframe. We refer to it as the 3-building D&D job, and all of the process equipment inside 32, 31, and 29 was removed. So these are just shells. 29 building, again, I said was the first building to be demolished. Demo activities are underway inside the 27 building and in the tech area of K25. This is a little bit, most of the north end has been demolished. We've got maybe 40% of the building left, and it'll be down. Should be down in about 2 weeks. I mentioned the 1401 building. There's the 1401 building, over 400,000 square feet. These are the change houses. This is the lab area, and these are just ancillary facilities. That right there, that building right there, that was the original Manhattan Engineer District building, 1001 building. For those of you that have seen military bases, just looked just like the old kind of Army base. And it was torn down in the early 2000s. This is the 1420 building where they did maintenance and refurbished the converters and process gas equipment, and there's the old steam plant. So what's left? I think that's what David wanted to know. What's left to be done? This map kind of tells you graphically what's left. Once all the buildings are done, after 25, this will be done. We'll be through with 25. Dave mentioned the continuing resolution, and Mark mentioned that. That's going to have an impact on 25, the current schedule. Originally, it was July of 2014. Now we're forecasting about a 5 to 6 month delay in completing that project. So at the latest, by January of 2015, all of 25 will be gone. 27 will continue to do the pre-demo activities. Then we'll go to headquarters and say we're demo ready, and a lot of this is all contingent upon getting the funding that we need. At that point there, the only buildings that will remain would be 31 building, which would be an easy demo. This took about 8 to 10 months to demolish. 32 acres, 19 acres, so significantly less time than it took to take down 32. We have these facilities in this area right there, Poplar Creek. We've got this facility right here, which is a centrifuge facility. And then we've got this building right there, which is the 1037 building, which we refer to as the barrier plant. And then we got small facilities like CNF, the Central Neutralization Facility in Tosca. But other than that, then all the buildings, all the demo work will be complete. The only thing remaining then would be to finalize the action for the asbestos down in the powerhouse area, and then to work with the state and EPA on what's the final ROD, which will really address groundwater. Are there any groundwater actions that we need to take? And then again, our goal, ultimate goal, the in-state goal is to convert this to a commercial industrial park. Those of you that have been out there at the site and are familiar with it, the whole front area lawn of the site has been transferred over to Crowett. There's 2 tenant buildings out there that are 2 spec buildings. One building's been occupied now in the front. So, and then the whole center of the site, all the way up through to the end of just north of 1401 building, that's all been transferred. There's over 700 acres that have been transferred. I guess that's it. That's the end. So, I mean, I kind of see light at the end of the tunnel. If I think back to what Norman said when I was at the lab in '97, you saw the photograph, the aerial of the site, what it looked like when I came to the site in 2000, and then you look at this photograph right there. A lot of work's been done. We're close to being finished. With that, I'll open it up to you, Dave. I don't know if you got
Thank you. How about questions here? Okay. Ms. Cook, we'll start with you, I think.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
I didn't say that, Frank.
Oh, that's okay. Ready? When these buildings actually come down, okay, and we've got flat land, is this when commercial development will be able to come in and build and start their other companies in the area?
There's already been, and you know this, Alfreda, because you were out there.
I do those lead questions.
We've already transferred, this whole front lawn area has been transferred. Working with the state and EPA, we still have groundwater concerns. If the ground is clean, we do a covenant deferral. That doesn't mean that we get a clean bill of health, but we still can do a covenant deferral. And I'm going to rely on Dave or John to stop me if I'm saying something wrong. But so there's still the provision to go ahead and do a covenant deferral if we're fairly comfortable that we've got a clean bill of health. Now, once we go in and we tear the buildings down and we go through a process we call dynamic verification strategy, which we then compare the results from the samples that we collect against the cleanup criteria. We submit that documentation to the state of Tennessee and EPA. If they agree with it, then we say no further action. We get a no further action determination. That's the most preferred alternative. But we still, until we address groundwater, I think there's still going to be the issue about the final ROD. But I mean, it's not preventing. You know, we've got a tenant out in the powerhouse area that's currently producing the chip wood for the ORSSAB boiler. We've got Paul Industries inside right there. They're located in the 1036 building. So it doesn't. I think the ideal situation would be total built clean bill of health. DOE to say we no longer have any ownership. We transfer the whole site over to Crowett, and that's the ultimate goal. But in the interim, I don't think that the conditions have stymied, private industry.
So I think what I'm hearing is that this is a gradual process and there's certain areas or...
Let me go back to this slide right here. This might be easier. Okay, we're in the process. This area right here, this is where 33 is located. We're in the process right now of collecting all the required data and information that we'll provide over to the state of Tennessee. And then eventually, they hopefully will say no further action is required. So we will put green hatches over that area there, and we call them exposure units, where the 33 buildings located. We're also in the process of getting the transferring. Once we get the clean bill of health, we go through the process to transfer it over to Crowett. This area here has already received the no further action from the state of Tennessee. We're in the process now of we have to do independent verification. You may recall that where the SSIB wanted independent verification. Currently, ORSSAB does that for the Department of Energy. ORSSAB will do independent verification to agree with the results, and then we will then transfer that property over to Crowett. Once they own that property, they can come in there and construct a facility on that property there. Now, in an area like down in the area of 27, that the Department of Energy won't transfer that area because we still have cleanup that's required. So, does that answer it?
It does,
Okay.
it does.
Mr. McKinney?
Yes, thank you. Looks like a nice place for a landing strip, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So, we've been so fixated on the above ground out there with all the demo and so on that's going on, and very little has been said, at least my experience with the underground side, and you kind of opened it up with the rod and the groundwater issues. I guess this may be more a question for Dave. Are there ongoing contributing groundwater issue sources on that property, or have they been pretty much?
I'll answer that one. We have a very aggressive cleanup approach to ETTP to remove all sources. So you saw us going into the burial ground.
Right.
And digging down. So every area that we have a source of contamination, we're going in and removing that. In the 1070B burial ground, which is located right here in that area, we went down something like 35 feet down into the groundwater. So our objective there in having a very aggressive cleanup is to get out of having to restrict the land, being able to transfer it so it can be used for private industry, and to get out of having to do groundwater pump and treat. So for the most part, we've addressed all our sources. We still have a source in this area right here, and jump in here, John, you guys. But we got a source right around 27, and once we get 27 building out of the way, tear the slab up, and 29 building where we have access, we'll address that. It's a very slow-moving plume, and when it daylights into the water, it's below drinking water criteria. We also have a lot of I should have brought a plume map, but we've got a plume in around the center of the site. Now we've got a groundwater study. I've got a project manager that'll be evaluating that and working with the state of Tennessee. Out in Zone 1, we had a plume that migrated from the 1070B or 1070A burial ground in this area right here that daylighted into the 901 pond. And what we've seen, having gone in and removed that source, the levels have significantly dropped down, and the term that the hydrologists use, that they're naturally attenuating, meaning that the bugs in the environment are consuming the hydrocarbons that were present in the solvents. So in Zone 1, the decision has not been agreed to by the state or EPA, but I would say we've got no groundwater, active groundwater treatment that we'll have to put in place in Zone 1. In Zone 2, we still got to address some areas where K25 building is located, between K25 and 1401 in that area there, and then right in this area around 27. And I don't know if John, or I don't want to put you guys on the spot, but the groundwater, the conditions at ETTP are different at the lab. We pretty much have the buildings were used for the same purpose year after year. We didn't have researchers come in and work for 2 to 3 years, and then the use of that facility changed. A lot of our piping, in fact, most of our process piping, except for that one line that was ran beside east of 1401, for the most part, a lot of it was above grade. So we don't have the contaminants and the issues that they have, say, at the laboratory. Which is part of the reason I think the end-use working group, when they evaluated that, they said, hey, this site has high potential for reuse as an industrial park. So our cleanup criteria, again, I didn't touch on that. It's 0 to 10 feet was what the end-use working group recommended. 0 to 10 feet to support infrastructure, basements, utilities, etc. And then once we get down to meeting the interim record of decision for Zone 1 and Zone 2, we've got agreed upon groundwater model that we run the data through. And if for whatever reason the remaining contaminants at that 10 feet level, or whatever, wherever we achieve the cleanup levels for the industrial worker, if for whatever reason that shows that there's still a risk to groundwater, then we go deeper, and that's the agreement what we have with the state and EPA. For the most part, we haven't had to go down much deeper than, in a lot of areas we pull the DVS, we do a 2-3 foot, cleanup, and then from that point down, there's a lot of, we don't have to go any further, except in the burial grounds.
Thank you.
Mr. Bell?
Two questions, please. On the centrifuge site at K25, what are the present plans in the future for those buildings?
Our DOE's approach right now is to remove all the centrifuge units from inside the building, and you may recall I want to say we removed about 45. The bulk of our funding on the site is uranium enrichment, D&D funded. We call it PBS 40. The centrifuge facility is defense funded, and it's PBS 43. We started out, removed about 40 some odd, 45, 48 centrifuge units. They were hauled over to the EMWMF and grouted up before we stopped that. So once we get funding, we will go in, remove all the units. There's still an issue we'll have to work with security on classification. There's concern that there may be residuals inside the building that would limit its reuse.
But there's nothing going on there now.
There's nothing going on. It's just totally shut
Okay,
down.
only other question. On the groundwater plumes, with respect to rad values, is there anything other than uranium in the groundwater plume?
Well, most of what we found were solvents like TCE, things like that, from where they degreased equipment. And then primarily that, right beside 1401, there was a line that over years cracked and leaked. And that's where a lot of and I mentioned G-Pit. G-Pit was located up there. There was a seep that daylighted right beside the garage, if you're familiar with the site. And we used to collect that and run that seep through a treatment unit. Since the G-Pit's been remediated, the levels have dropped down to where we don't have to treat the seep. So.
Thank you.
Excuse me.
Oh,
Dave,
sure. Yep.
Can I go back and ask Dave a question about CUSP?
Yeah.
And you wouldn't let me do it a while ago. I guess it was out of order.
You didn't see your card.
I guess I did. Yeah.
Dave, on CUSP, of which you may remember I have a particular interest in, and you're talking about plans to do something with that in the future?
Correct.
Who's preparing the plans? What are the treatment plans?
Okay, my understanding is that the CUSP material is material that's eligible for direct disposal. So they have worked out disposal pathways for it. So they're basically
Direct?
Right. So they will load it into appropriate containers and ship it out to the west for disposal.
Right. And ship it to where?
Western arid deserts. Probably the same place everything else that we've shipped out west is.
It'll go to Nevada.
Yeah.
It'll go to Nevada test site.
Thank you.
Ms. Martin?
I was interested in the NAF traps. You said you removed them. What happens after that?
What will happen after that is we'll come up with a sampling plan they might not have any uranium. If they were heated up and the uranium was driven off back into the process system, then we're not at, one scenario would be no uranium. Another scenario would be some uranium, depending upon that level. Then we'll come up, working with UCOR, disposal plan. They could be direct disposed, or we may take them in. We've got a segmentation shop on site, open them up, mine them out. A lot of the uranium that we're recovering from the equipment, if it's of no use to Y-12, we just grout it up, ship it out west.
Mr. Stansfield.
Do you have a ballpark figure of how much of that 1,500 acres has been sold?
Well, no, sir, I don't. I do, if I looked at the,
I mean, is it like half or?
Jim, I can help there, because I spoke to Brian Henry today about that. Of the 1,500 acres that's been declared surface cleared, 700 acres has been transferred to Crowett, the Industrial Development Authority, for the Heritage Center. So 700 acres has been transferred to a private, 700 acres of that 1,500 acres has been transferred to Crowett, which is the Industrial Park Authority for the Heritage Center. Of those 700 acres, I believe around 125 have been put into reuse with some private client. Roughly an equivalent amount is land that serves as buffer or is otherwise undevelopable, and what's left is still available for future opportunities. So 700 transferred, 125 put into use, about 130-ish not workable for use, and everything else open for business.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Paulus.
Yeah, this is, you're doing, right in the middle of the gray is the K-25.
Yes, sir.
My understanding, once all the smoke settled, the slab that the building was on is going to be preserved for the national park thing, correct?
A study is planned to evaluate the feasibility of leaving the slab. It's our expectation that we're going to find out that the slab is salvageable. Correct.
Okay.
But the preferred approach would be to save it so it delineates the footprint of the original site, and it's a fairly cost-effective way of doing that. So that is the plan. And then that land itself, about 80 acres, would be set aside and taken out of the land base available for development, but put into the land space set aside for historical preservation purposes.
I probably should have clarified that. The K-25 building, it was a negative pressure system, so it was in leakage that everybody was worried about. There were some PCB oils in tanks that that had contained PCBs. But for the most part, we've gone in and done some bias sampling. We're not anticipating, we still got to go through the process that we've agreed to with the state. We're not anticipating any significant contamination beneath the K-25 slab. The real problem was in a couple facilities right here just east of K-25, and then the 1401 was the major maintenance building where they discharge a lot of material out of that line there. So the plume itself kind of wraps around this way and runs towards Mitchell Branch and then kind of down this direction. So up under K-25, crossing our fingers, not a lot of, but we'll still go through the characterization process to demonstrate that.
Okay. Do you have another question?
No.
Ms. Martin, do you have another question? Okay. Mr. Hedger.
There's used to be a chromium-6 and a technetium-99 problem there. At least it was perceived to be a problem. Are those being remediated to the point where they're no longer a problem there?
The Tech 99 area is pretty much limited to the tech area of 25, and we're in there right now. Kurt and his crews are in there doing all that characterization, coming up with a strategy for how to demolish and get rid of the equipment. Right now, it looks as if the vast majority of the building and two of the units, the buffer unit and then two additional units, will be able to go into the EMWMF. then the southern 3 units will have to go out west to NNSS.
But the groundwater contamination in there,
Well, I'm not aware, I don't know. Dave, do you know? I haven't heard, there's not a technetium problem there. It's real
Go back
soluble in
and
water.
check, Bob, but my understanding is that the technetium issues were actually associated with contamination on building structures.
Yeah.
The chromium issue was a groundwater and surface water issue, but treatment systems have been put in place to capture and treat that, so that's pretty well been mitigated.
The demo, that'll be part of our approach in developing the demo approach for the tech area so that we don't have breach of equipment and we don't have tech. Like you'll see a lot of times we use misters in some of the photographs. We want to make sure that we don't have the tech come in contact with atmosphere nor water because it's very soluble. Dave's right, the chromate problem was right down in this area here and it followed storm drain 170. We've got a slurry wall that blocks that and some collection wells that were put in place that withdraw that groundwater, treat it, and then discharge it out of an NPDS permitted line.
okay, thank you.
Okay, when UCOR came on site here a year or so back, in one of the presentations, it was mentioned that around the ETTP site, there were small areas which had not been remediated for one reason or another, and it was hoped that that budget and time would allow for some of these areas to be remediated. Has any progress been made on these?
I wish I knew the areas you're talking about. Because we've got areas that we know we need to clean up, but
Didn't that include the extend site?
Yes, sir. And yeah, they're all, but these are the areas that you see when you're going around where there may be just a little barrier put up with a warning sign on them or something like this.
And some of the work that Bob, that's some of the work that Bob's, can you hear me? Some of the work that Bob Smith and Mr. Bradford have been doing as far as cleaning up waste that was on site in different areas, and some of it was barricaded off, and they've made great progress on that. I can't really quote you any numbers, but it's a significant change. Just driving around between the buildings, you can see a lot of waste has been disposed of.
That's good news.
yeah, you're talking the rad ropes. There's an effort, like Steve's saying, where we go out and remove the rad. We evaluate because they were put up years ago. I'm not familiar with any areas that are out in the open now. Mainly around the buildings, and they're clearly marked. And then the way our program works inside Zone 2, we tear a building down to the concrete slab. Then the slab is addressed under the remedial action program. So it's kind of a buffer from a contact standpoint with subsurface contamination.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to open it up to the public here. Ms. Garacki.
Hi, I'm Susan Gowerecki, and I had a question about industrialization. You've had longtime tenants, McLink and M&EC, in facilities at Heritage Center. Has any progress been made in transferring those facilities to those companies?
You know that one, Dave?
I believe that in each case where a tenant is using, well, with one exception, buildings that were original structures, they are under a leasing arrangement and not a transferred arrangement. So buildings have been transferred to Crowet. They're out of DOE's hands, but they are subsequently leased to tenants, and I'm unaware of any case where they have been sold to tenants.
The U.S. Department of Energy is cleaning up the Oak Ridge Reservation of residual hazardous and radioactive contamination left over as a result of decades of nuclear energy research. Much of that work has been influenced by the Oak Ridge Site-Specific Advisory Board, a citizens panel that provides independent advice and recommendations on DOE's cleanup operations. You're welcome to attend the meetings and be part of this important work. For more information, call us or visit our website.